There is a monster in South Africa, and this monster used to wear a white face. He used to speak Afrikaans. It used to call black people kafirs, and I say that with respect, because the mere me calling anyone else that in this day and age is enough to have me arrested. And we used to tell black people that they did not belong, or didn't smell the same, or didn't eat the same, or didn't even look the same. Well, that monster was apartheid. And we fought it. We bled for it. Many, many died for it and because of it. The world placed sanctions upon us. We were isolated. And eventually, this monster was defeated. Or so we thought. Because now, from what I see, the monster has simply changed faces. Now it wears a black face. Now it speaks isiZulu, isiXhosa, Sesotho. It calls foreigners makwera and tells them they do not belong. They do not smell the same. They don't eat the same. They don't look the same. Now, South Africans are doing to foreigners exactly what was done to them. They are whipping them, stoning them, killing them, chasing them out of their homes, old people, babies, hauling them out of beds in hospitals, ripping them out of places of business, setting fire to their shops, humiliating them, hunting them, blasting it all over social media for the world to see. And they're using the same words, the same logic, the same hatred, but just aimed at a different target. But I'm not here to decide who is good and who is evil, and neither am I asking you to do that. But I've decided I would like to decode this pattern. Because until we understand how the monster works, the monster will just keep changing faces. Same monster, different face, shapeshifted. Okay, so let's start with the decode on this, right? So what's really happening in South Africa right now? We literally are in the middle of a humanitarian crisis. Foreign nationals such as Malawians, Zimbabweans, Nigerians, Somalis, Pakistanis, Ethiopians, Congolese, Zambians, every Ghanaians, every country in Africa are being attacked, killed, and driven out of this country by local South Africans. Now, this is most definitely not a spontaneous breakout of violence. It's a pattern. And it's also a symptom. And we know by now that no symptom can be cured by treating the symptom alone. We have to look for the cause, the root of the symptom. Ching, ching, hydrate. So let me look at some stats here. In the past week alone, more than 900 people have been arrested during nationwide anti-migrant protests. A Ghanaian national was shot dead. A 21-year-old South African was killed after a Somali-owned shop was looted. I do believe that was the same story where they mistook him for a foreigner. Malawians have been killed. A Malawian man being stoned to death. People being whipped in the streets like beasts. Thousands have been displaced, sitting at borders, waiting for buses to take them home, sitting in community centers, in towns and cities all over South Africa. So, here's the pattern that I see. And again, I'd love you guys to give me some input here. Tell me what you think. But I'm really, right now I'm using Decode, Dismantle, Reorganise, Choose, and to apply that to where we're at right now. So the first layer I see here, the government is hugely corrupt. The ANC, the ruling party, they are openly corrupt. I mean, we recently just heard of this Pala situation where something like 500 million, or maybe was it $1 million, he'd been hiding in his couch through corrupt deals. And then this goes on in this country. This country has become a hollowed out state. It has failed to provide the very basics for its people. Services, basic services. Have you any idea how many people over the years, older African people, have told me how they wish apartheid was back? Because at least in apartheid times, things were clean, things worked. They were safe. This government has failed to provide basic services, jobs, housing, safety, dignity, to say the very least, for its very own people. And that rot comes from the top. It seeps down. When the top of the country, the government, is so disgustingly rotten, it's like this, seeps down into the people, into the country. It can't not work like that. That's how energy works. Remember, you and this entire universe are created from sound, frequency, and vibration. And that is a very shitty vibration that is sitting at the top, that has this parasitic energy, and it just oozes into the people of the country. Second layer, people are desperate. When people are hungry, unemployed, living without hope, waking up every morning without hope, they look for someone to blame. They look for a target. And when the government points away from itself, diverts, in other words, towards the foreigners, the people follow. Because many still trust them. They're the fathers of the nation and the mothers of the nation, aren't they? If we understand how Africa works, there's a great respect for your mother and your father and your ancestors. And that, just as a segue, is where a lot of abuse actually comes in. And right now, many politicians have been accused of joining in on the xenophobia, right? It's there to win votes. I think win elections in November, I think the elections are coming in. Look at this now, June, elections around the corner. Suddenly, there's an amp up, the oldest trick in the book, right? Create a crisis, blame someone else, stay in power. That's the second layer. Let's look at the third layer. The monster has changed faces. And I know it's probably not going to make me very popular. But the people who were once victims of apartheid have now become the perpetrators of the very same ideology. They've adopted the same language. You don't belong here. You're not one of us. You are taking what belongs to us. You're stealing what's mine. You doing this, you doing that. And just by the by, I'm not saying that that is not happening. Of course it's happening as well. Yes. But that is not just anger, you know. I think it goes so far beneath anger. But it's also the ideology that was used to justify apartheid, if that makes sense at all. I'm scrambling for words in my head right now. It has just been repurposed or recycled, right? Exactly the same ideology. Fourth layer, history repeating itself. There's one thing I remember about apartheid. We had sanctions from every country. We were completely isolated. The world isolated us. I mean, we were treated like pariahs because of our inhumane treatment towards other human beings, because our policy stated that Black people were second-class citizens. Right? Now again, there's talk of sanctions against South Africa. And once again, the world is watching. Once again, we are being judged by how we treat foreigners or visitors in our midst. You know, I'm not asking anyone to take pity or to feel sorry for anyone here. It's a critical time and for so many people. But what I'm saying is, let's look at the pattern. Because again, if we don't see it, it's going to repeat itself. And if it's happening in my country, on my continent, rest assured, it's happening in yours too. So if you haven't noticed the pattern that might be happening in your country or continent, perhaps this is an opportunity for you to actually see that as well, because this is how we're going to dismantle the system, is by realizing what they're doing and how they're doing it, and how they're using faces for the public that the public love. But it's still the same puppet master with a different puppet, singing the same song with a different tune. That's what's happening. Okay, so let's have a look now at what I've called the machinery. And how this crisis was manufactured or engineered. There was no accident. We know that. Since 1994, that's when the ANC government came into power, South Africa's borders have been extremely porous. In other words, effectively open. You can drive to a border post, and hey, a lot of foreigners have spoken about this. They've told me that directly in conversation as well, is that you drive to a border post, there's a gate. Hi, where's the fence? Ipile fence. Where's the fence? There is no fence. It's become a joke. I can't help but feel that it's almost as if illegal immigrants have been invited in, like a cynical plan. I can't help but feel that. It's like a deliberate invitation to create crisis. We know South Africa has been the guinea pig for this continent for the longest time. They've guinea pigged us since the beginning. And they're still guinea pigging us. So, this is what Border Management Authorities have had to say, BMA. So, the BMA was only formally established in 2023, right? That's Border Management Authority. Nearly 3 decades into this democracy. Only then, border management authorities have been established. And serious concerns regarding these borders have been raised by them, which are effectively open with little control to prevent illegal crossings. The BMA is severely underfunded and understaffed, leaving South Africa's borders wide open. All Border Patrol entities are understaffed, undersourced, and lack of requisite equipment and infrastructure. One report explicitly states, the porous borders facilitate the undetected entry of illegal immigrants, and certain security personnel have undermined the system. It's well known you can bribe these guys. Very well known you can bribe them. 3 decades of neglect, of absolute inaction on this situation. And I'm not saying no one has been arrested over the years. I'm sure people have been arrested. They would have had to have been just to create a facade, right? We all know the lovely cover life, or the cover image that is created. So, and now suddenly there's this urgent crisis that requires urgent measures. 600 million spent on one day on the 30th of June for security. What the hell? Have you any idea how much security at the border posts that could have bought over the years? Anyway, let me not divert. I digress. Okay, so what are these urgent measures then? Aha, digital IDs. In May 2026, the government released draft regulations for a national digital identity system. The draft regulations propose the creation of secure digital identity credentials that will coexist alongside the department's physical products. Citizens will be able to access digital versions of key records, ID documents, birth certificates, marriage certificates, while using biometric verification to confirm their identity remotely. The government calls this cutting edge. The draft regulations was published in May 2026 with a public comment deadline of 6 June 2026. Where are we now? June, well, July now. 2026. When was the March on March ordered? 30th of June. Guys, are we seeing a pattern here? Are we seeing a pattern? Okay, so let's connect the dots, shall we? Who benefits from this chaos? Simple. Those who have been waiting for an excuse to implement total control. And who is at the center of that network? Let's look. Cupcake Cyril Ramaphosa. They say he's president of this country. I cannot call him president because he's not. He's a spokesperson. But let's call him president just for today, to give him his moment in the sun here on Aquarius rising Africa. He's been photographed with Bill Gates plenty of times, most notably 2016 AIDS conference in Durban. The Gates Foundation has funded initiatives across this continent. Now, anyone who does not know Bill or Melinda Gates or the Gates Foundation, you definitely need to do some research. So please do. I'm not going to talk about them right now. In the meantime, I'll have a sip of hydration to calm my nerves. And then here's one of my favorites, Nikki Oppenheimer, the mining magnate who donated 10 million rand to Ramaphosa's CR17 presidential campaign. How many times have you heard me on this show say Oppenheimer is Ramaphosa's handler? There's evidence. This is not just some conspiracy theory I'm talking about now. These are documented facts. Go check it out. It's documented. And again, Julius Malema of the EFF has stated openly that Ramaphosa is made by white monopoly capitalists in the form of Nikki Oppenheimer. Nikki Oppenheimer is just one of them. You guys been watching the Best Kept Secrets of the Deep State, that docu we did? And what do they say to us? The faces we see, they're not the ones we should be worried about. Like the Rothschilds and stuff. Yeah, in South Africa, the Oppenheimers are very powerful. I know they're worldwide powerful. That sounded so wrong. Anyway, I'm not going to go back there. I think you all know what I mean. They're worldwide powerful. You know what I mean. Anyway, so that's what I'm saying. Now we're seeing who's backing who. So let's look at the pattern. Porous borders for 30 years. No fence, no control, no urgency. A manufactured crisis. Immigrants suddenly become your enemy. Number 3, a solution that was already in the waiting. Digital IDs, centralized control, surveillance. 4, the elite network that benefits. The Gates Foundation, Oppenheimers, Rupert's, the entire globalist agenda benefits from this. This is not about fixing a border. This is about creating the conditions for the new world order. And South Africa is the testing ground and the gateway. Gateway, yeah, gateway, for the new world order. You cannot solve in 30 days what was created in 30 years. But what we can do is see a pattern. And once you see this pattern, you cannot unsee it. So let me ask you a question rhetorically. How does one solve in a single day or a week or a month what was allowed to happen over more than 30 years? For 3 decades, South Africa's borders have been open, effectively open, like a free-for-all, literally no fence in certain places, no meaningful control, border officials open to bribery and corruption, no system that manages the flow of people entering or even exiting the country. Millions have crossed, legally and illegally, and the government did nothing. Now suddenly, the crisis. Now suddenly, the border is the issue, or the borders are the issue. Now suddenly, there's this huge humanitarian crisis that's been created with an urgency that's never been there before. Right? You can't solve in 30 days what's been created over 30 years. But what you can do is use this chaos as an excuse. You can create the crisis and then turn around and say, well, we had no choice. We must implement controls. We must implement digital IDs. We must centralize things. We must install smart cities and 24-hour surveillance. Because, we don't want these foreigners coming back now, do we? Taking your jobs again. This is never about fixing a border. It's about fixing the population. The oldest trick in the book. Manufacture the chaos. Manufacture the chaos. Blame the scapegoat. Then offer the solution. That's always been waiting in the sidelines or in the wings or whatever you choose to call it. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. Okay, now you might have heard me previously speak about the 2 wings of the same bird. So let me bring together another layer that a lot of people miss. And this is what we need to understand about politics. Now I'm going to give an example here. We have on the EFF, the one side, now you guys, and I'm using him, Julius Malema, as an example because recently you would have seen him, excuse me, with Donald Trump. He's the one settler, one bullet guy, and he's been in court since then, blah, blah, blah. Just giving you an idea for those of you who don't know. So we have Julius Malema on the one side. He's calling for open borders. He's saying Africa should have open borders, that foreigners should be allowed to be in South Africa. Okay? Come on. No fences, no control, let everyone in. And yes, we have like an African passport, I guess, who knows? Something like that. And then, of course, we have the DA, the Democratic Alliance, which is the white party or multiracial party, right? That has a lot of obviously the European mentality, if you want to call it that. And they, of course, are opposing that. They are calling for closed borders, stop the influx, protect what is ours, restrict, doing everything beautifully. If you guys, again, watched last week's show, I spoke a bit about the DA. I don't want to go there again. They're annoying. Zionist puppets, in my opinion. But anyway. And then, of course, along with that, now we have the new girl on the block. And her name is Jacinta Ngobisi Zuma. She was the founder of the March on March movement. Young African girl, very vibey, clearly got her stuff together. And she has now promised, by the way, that for the next 6 months, every Thursday, there's going to be a big march in every city until all the foreigners are gone. So that's what's being threatened right now. And pretty much until the government shuts down the borders. And then we have the new MK party, Jacob Zuma. Now, I'm not sure if Jacinta Ngobisi Zuma and Jacob are actually related, to be perfectly honest. It's not necessarily that they are, but very potentially. Okay, Jacob Zuma, as we know, is the ex-president of South Africa, and he kind of took the walk of shame, and he passed his throne onto Cyril Ramaphosa, not long before the New World Order or the COVID was implemented. I think it was 17. I can't remember. 2017 maybe, right? So we have then we have Jacob Zuma himself aligning, and he's a Zulu, and the biggest party in South Africa are the Zulus, and they've been the most aggressive and vocal in this whole anti-immigration movement, right? So then we have him aligning with the March on March and Operation Dudula. Now, these are all political operations in South Africa, right? Now, if you knew anything about Jacob Zuma, I believe he was the only president actually who didn't sell out to the New World Order. But I have no doubt that he was strongly aligned with the local mafias. He was definitely, in my opinion, aligned with that. I mean, they fight, they scream, they call each other racists, xenophobes, they're polar opposites, they hate each other, but yet they are all serving the same system, right? This is the two wings of the same bird. So you have Jacinta and Zuma as on the one wing, right? EFF on the other. So let's look at the bird. What is the bird? The bird is the system. The wings are the political parties and movements or whatever of the system. They flap against each other. They create turbulence. They keep us distracted. And while we are busy choosing sides, right? While right now they're arguing about these open borders versus closed borders, while they're debating whether it's going to be Malema or Jacinta Zuma or whatever, whoever is involved, the DA, I want to say Steenhuisen, and he used to be the ex-DA leader, but he's not the DA leader anymore. I don't know who it is. I don't know who it is. Or any of them. While this craziness is going on, the bird is flying exactly where it was always going to fly. The bird would be the elite, the globalists, the New World Order. And that's how it operates. And the handle is behind it, right? We've got to think about this. So you see, it doesn't matter which wing you actually choose. Now, again, this system works in your country as well. It's very well known. You're always going to have two opposing parties, and the one's going to go down, and then the other one has their say, and then the other one's up, right? Doesn't matter which wing you choose. Both wings are attached to the same bird. If you choose, like in this case, open borders, you get chaos, and chaos justifies control. If you choose closed borders, you get authoritarianism, and authoritarianism also justifies control. So either way, the outcome is actually the same. Digital ID, a surveillance state, population that is divided, distracted, angry, disarmed. None of their dreams are coming true. The argument is not really the point, though, is it? It's really just the decoy. They get us to argue to create a decoy. So, when we see the likes of, let's say, Malema, because he's famous for shooting his mouth off and saying exactly what he wants, and Helen Ziller or whoever it is screaming at each other, or when you see Jacinta Zuma marching down the streets, and when you see Jacob Zuma backing anti-immigrant movements, let's not take sides. Let's take a step back and ask, who benefits from this fight? Who benefits from this fight? Because I'll tell you what, the people who are benefiting from this are definitely not in the room. They're not on the freaking streets with you. They're not even in the parliament, actually. They are behind the scenes, holding the handle, steering the bird, and preying on your weaknesses. That's how they can steer the bird, because they know exactly what your weaknesses are, and they trigger you on that. Hello, narcissistic governing is what we are controlled and governed by. And if we haven't realized that by now, we must wake up. And again, guys, this is not conspiracy theories. I'm doing pattern recognition. I always tell you I'm good at connecting the dots. I'm now just simply calling it pattern recognition, as opposed to connecting the dots. There's patterns. These guys have got a template they follow, and they apply the same template in every country, in every situation, but it's just masked differently. I mean, the elite have used these tactics for centuries. Divide and control. Create two extremes. Let people fight over which extreme is better. And while they're fighting, you can then implement exactly what you wanted all along. Open borders, closed borders, actually doesn't matter, because the goal is never been to fix the border. The goal is to fix the population into a freaking digital cage, a surveillance grid, a controlled society, smart cities. And South Africa is the testing ground for that. Ha! Cheers. Okay, so now let's look at the handle, shall we? You all know how much I like this guy so much. Johann Rupert and the shadow state. So I want to show you something here. I want to show you how this guy is holding the handle. Johann Rupert is the richest man in South Africa. He is the chairman of Richemont, the luxury goods giant that owns Cartier, Montblanc, and Vacheron Constantin. His net worth is estimated at over $19 billion. He controls 3 massive holding companies, Richemont, Remgro, and Renette. Now, isn't it interesting, just by the way, the town I went to school at is Graaf Renette. And that's where he owns a huge amount of property. He actually owns Graaf Renette. So he's called one of his companies Renette. His family's valuation has surged to $18.9 billion. So around $19 billion is what the man is worth. He's not just wealthy, he's extremely powerful. And he is at the center of a shadow state that operates alongside, I'm not going to say alongside, I'm going to say above the formal government. That's just me putting it out there. So let's look at some evidence here. Okay. In May 2025, Cyril Ramaphosa faced a diplomatic crisis with the US President Donald Trump over allegations of white genocide and land seizures. Now, you all on this channel remember that, right? So let's look at what happened there. Johann Rupert broke the deadlock. He was instrumental in setting up the meeting. He was part of the official government delegation. Why? So the EFF condemned his inclusion as an exhibition of undue influence because the left has long ago argued that Rupert is the president's puppeteer and that his influence is a form of state capture. I don't know if you guys understand state capture, what that means. Yeah, if you have those same terminologies where you are, but I'm going to explain it in a minute. And in the time they were in the Oval Office, Johann Rupert was there, if you guys remember correctly. And he actually corrected Trump's claim and where Trump was saying that, you know, about the white genocide. He actually said that the violence was a broader crime issue and not a targeted genocide. So that was already, you know, he came in to change that narrative. Now, there's a lot of people in this country who are very against that because if you're a farmer, you know you're being genocided. That's the understanding around this. So I'm saying that because that's where confusion was created. So whether it's true or untrue, right? It was then confusion. So then he took that conversation to a solution that benefits his network. Took that conversation. Starlink. And we all know Elon Musk owns Starlink, right? So by lobbying for the technology to be used at police stations, he was effectively pushing for Elon Musk's business interests to bypass local regulations. Are you seeing how they work? And it's well known here that Elon, and I think it's in Namibia as well, I'm not sure, but here in South Africa, Elon has been trying to get Starlink in here, but they won't allow him because according to BEE regulations, you have to have a black partner that owns 50% of your business, and he's refused that. And so Johan Rupert was trying to get Elon Musk in here, his Starlink, based on the broader crime area that South Africa in general, and it does, make no mistake, South Africa's got a terrible crime rate. But he was taking it away from farmers being genocided to everyone in South Africa has a massive crime problem. So we need to put in surveillance systems which require Starlink. You with me? There was one analyst who said, imagine what would have happened if the president had taken the Guptas. Now, the Guptas, the Indian people with whom Jacob Zuma had all these crooked dealings, right? People would have said state capture, but the same argument is not raised when it comes to Johan Rupert. Think about that. Johan Rupert's political influence in this country is definitely not new, and I have to tell you that. The Rupert family is renowned for having pulled the strings in this country for the longest time. During Jacob Zuma's presidency, now remember, Jacob Zuma would not sell out to the New World Order. His bosses were the Guptas, right? Zuma himself testified that Rupert threatened to shut down the country if Zuma fired then Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan. Pravin Gordhan has since passed away. Now we want to see who's got their little puppets in order. So we can see this is not just an astute businessman advising a president. This guy truly believes he has the power to decide who governs this country. And when we're looking at those kind of resources, we can see why that's possible. And then, of course, there's my other favorite, Nikki Oppenheimer, the mining magnate, another mining magnate who donated 10 million rand to Cyril's 2017 presidential campaign. And that's Rupert's closest financial rival in this country. So together, those two form, just those two form this powerful elite network. Now, if they were the only two in the country, that would be enough, okay? Because we know the Oppenheimers are way in with the, what was it, the Knights of Malta, stuff like that. We know that. And there's more. And I'm going to do more shows on the elite families and the elite bloodlines of this country. There's more. There's the Vissers, there's the Beckers, there's the Sassoons, there's a whole lot of them. But we'll get into it. Rupert and Oppenheimer, in my opinion, are the controllers of this country. And of course, now you've got to ask, who do they answer to? That's a story for another day. So let's go back to, I'll ask you again, when we go back to just this whole argument and fighting thing, when we see, for example, Julius Juju, we call him Juju, and let's say Helen Ziller, or I don't know, fighting about open borders, etc., you know, who benefits? When we see Zuma marching in the streets, backed by other Zuma's MK party, who benefits? And the IFP, by the way. The IFP is backed this march as well. And when you see the government manufacturing a crisis, who benefits? When you see the digital IDs being rushed in, and they've been coming in since 2020, a long time ago. I mean, I can't even remember the year now, but for quite a while. And when we look at seeing all these things rushing into the country now, and while the country's burning in crisis, who benefits? And again, that answer is not in presidents. The presidents or the leaders don't have that answer. Neither do the people on the street, in my opinion. This answer sits in boardrooms, private jets, golf courses. Let me leave it there. You know where I want to go with that. But anyway. I mean, the way I see it, the answer is in the shadow state that runs South Africa while we argue about who is to blame. They're sitting, watching us. Think about that movie, The Hunger Games. That's exactly what it's like. They sit up there, look down at us, freaking out at something that they are creating, laughing while they're doing it. Yeah, my opinion, the monster has changed faces, but the structure and the architecture, the breath of the monster, if you want to call it that, still the same. It's just shifted, or let's call it shape-shifted itself. And I hope we can see that. What I really did want to bring in as well, because I think this is super important, and this is not something that people speak about a lot. But the thread here for me as well is white women who fought for change in this country. It was in the early 80s, if my memory serves me correctly, that the tide began to turn against apartheid. The world was really watching us. There were strong sanctions imposed. And I don't remember exactly the experiences aligned to that, but I remember it was starting to bite people a lot. The internal resistance within all of us was like, And I'm going to say one of the most significant forces for change in this country was white women of my generation and one above. I'm going to say that. And it's been minimized, but it's true. So if we look at going back to the 80s, we look at white women like Nadine Gordimer, Helen Suzman, the women of the Black Sash, and countless others, but those are the most significant ones that stick up in my mind, fought hugely for change. They pushed for women's rights. They pushed for the release of Nelson Mandela. Boy, apartheid was something that we just could not stomach anymore. There were silent protests, women wearing black sashes, and if I remember correctly, even going on like hunger strikes, holding posters, and just refusing to shut up. They used their voices. We used our voices. I was one of those voices. We used our bodies. The system was like a resistant, cold brick wall that was built to keep that system very comfortable and compliant. And I want to point out here, because women in this country were up to a certain point very much treated like second-class citizens as well. And I'm going to just read you some stats here. Until the 1960s, South African women of all races were still fighting for basic legal recognition. White women only gained the right to vote somewhere in the 1930s. And even that was actually tied to a racist strategy. Why do I say that? Kind of diluted the black male franchise. I'm not sure if you're understanding what I'm saying. Because for decades after that, a woman could not buy a home or a car without a husband or a father signing surety. A woman could not inherit property if she wasn't married, because that property then had to go to her husband. She was, in the eyes of the law, we were, in the eyes of the law, legal minors. Black women were 10 times worse off. Under the Black Administration Act, African women in civil marriages before 1988 had no contractual capacity. They could not acquire or dispose of property. Their husbands owned everything. So it was white women who stood up and said, enough. And I want to say, I'm well aware there's a lot of contentious feelings around this, and you're entitled to your feelings. I'm entitled to mine too. I'm certainly not speaking from a place of privilege here. Because I can tell you, we as women, white women in this country, also knew what it felt like to be discriminated against because we were women. It was actually a terrible time. I think back. Women had no power in this country. You had power by the name of your husband. So we just kind of got sick and tired of being silenced. Told your voice didn't matter, I guess. And that your body or your future or whatever it is belongs to someone else. I don't think so. And that is why we fought. And that is why we pushed. And that is why we refused to be silent. And you know, this is why when I look back at the current crisis happening in this country right now, I feel it so deep. I really, really, really do. We never fought for change so that these women's daughters and granddaughters could be the perpetrators of that same kind of hatred. Although I do understand it. I really do. Generational wounds are strong. When I say never in my life did I think I'd see this happening in my country, it was more like never did I think that we were fighting for that monster to become this monster today. The same monster. But I guess that's part of human nature. And that's why I say, let's just decode it. So, when I see other Black South Africans calling foreigners makwera kwera, when I see them using the same language, logic, cruelty, jeez, the cruelty is unbelievable. That was once used against them. I really grieve. It's beyond anger for me now. It's grief. I grieve for the people who've been humiliated. And part of this, I grieve for my own South African people. Because believe me, as much as what the world is judging them now, they're amazing people. Yeah, let's see how that works out, We bled so that we could become something else. And I know that the Black people before us who experienced this So let's look at how we dismantle this, shall we? The architecture of what I call the monster. Because this is not an insult on anyone. This is really what's happening. The ANC government is not just corrupt. Again, it's been hollowed out from the inside. Money meant for services, for homes, for infrastructure has disappeared into pockets and underneath couches. Entire infrastructures are collapsing. Justice system is a joke. I mean, the police do nothing to protect ordinary people. Let me retract that. Because there are those police who do. I've been on the receiving end of some very amazing policemen. I have. But you're often going to find that police do not protect ordinary people, that they've become part of the problem. They are part of the problem when it comes to bribing and all sorts of dodgy deals. So it's not about incompetence, because I don't believe people are incompetent. Anyone who's taught and educated correctly is very competent, right? If you give them, obviously, the area in which their skills are most highly valued and usable. This is more like a collapse, right? I always talk about the collapse. And that's very important for those who want to stay in power. Because when the state fails, collapses, fails, if that's the right word, people become desperate. And when people are desperate, they become very, very easy to manipulate. You can tell a desperate person there's something for you at the end of the tunnel. They'll believe you if they're desperate enough. The leadership has created a narrative. Foreigners are the problem. They're taking your jobs. They're taking your women. They're taking your opportunities. They're feeding you poison, whatever it might be. Doesn't that sound like a similar? I mean, if we're looking at the Hitler and the Jew story, doesn't that sound like a similar narrative that was used there? The same narrative the apartheid regime used against Black South Africans. It's not new. It's the machine, and it's being run again. When we look at the people are not evil. I promise you they're not. They've been deceived. They've been manipulated. They've been lied to. They are very trusting people. As I said, you need to understand the African culture to understand the respect that they have for their elders. The ones in parliament are their elders. They've been betrayed and they're exhausted. People are exhausted. I mean, they've been literally failed by every structure that was meant to protect them. And then, think about human nature in its desperation. And then they see foreigners coming and living in the same poverty, but running businesses, surviving, doing well. And of course, the foreigners come. And yes, I'm not saying they don't start their own little clans and what have you. That's what's happening there. But they don't see someone as being resilient and, wow, let me do the same, be inspired by it. They see someone as trying to take away from them. They see people stealing from them. That's what happens in the desperate mindset, the poverty consciousness. So this is mob psychology, or psychology of the mob, if you will. It's not rational. It's survival instincts that have gone feral or crazy, mad, wild, on fire. That's what's happening here. So, as vocal as what I've been about, stop this madness right now. I understand where it comes from. The wound has not even begun to start being healed yet. Because if we just look at where this country is, we're 30 years out of apartheid, call it 35 to 40, because laws were changed. What we're dealing with now is the offspring of the last people who suffered through apartheid. It's generational wounds. I get that. I get it. When you look at the foreigners, I don't believe that any African person is a foreigner to this continent. They, in my opinion, are not invaders. They're refugees. They are human beings fleeing their own crises from an unstable government that has, as we know by now, already been corrupted and raped by so many Western countries for their resources. There's nothing left for the people anymore. The same systems exist there. And remember, these people are a lot more pliable. They've come here looking for safety, for work, a way to provide for their families. Same bread, same dignity, same everything that South Africans want, same food, whatever. I mean, they're our neighbors, our brothers and sisters. They are people, not statistics. And we are killing them. And you all know how I feel about child trafficking. This is fertile grounds for child and human trafficking. Undocumented immigrants, African children. It's what they want. Sure. The monster has changed its face, but the architecture of the monster is still the same. Corrupt government that does not serve its people. Desperate population that needs someone to blame. A scapegoat that is demonized to protect the powerful. A two-wing political system that keeps us fighting while the elite fly. Shadow state of billionaires who hold the control or the handle. That same design has been used before, and it's been used again. And unless we see it and we don't dismantle it, it's going to be used again and again and again and again. So let's look at how we can reorganize this, shall we? Reorganizing means building a different map, not just of the country, but of the relationships between its citizens and the state. The state must serve the people. The government must work for the people, or the leaders must serve the people. Because a government that does not protect its citizens, and by then a further stretch can't even protect the visitors in the country, is not a government. That's a freaking protection racket. The state then needs to be reformed. And certainly not by people who benefit from this corruption, but more rather the people who've been suffering because of this corruption need to benefit. And it's obvious to me that people must stop being the mob. Decent people must stand up and say no. Hold your fellow people accountable when they're treating other human beings like that. By all means, get on the streets and march. Have your thing there. Dance, do whatever you want to. Sing your song for the day. But put down your weapons and your arms. Let your voice be heard. Do not let your blood be spilt, and do so with intention. You know, people themselves must choose not to be weaponized, because people right now are being weaponized. People themselves must choose not to be weaponized and refuse it. They must see that the foreigner is not the enemy. Your neighbors are not your enemy. The system that created this desperation amongst the people, that's your enemy. That's the one you go for. The foreigner is not the problem. But hey, maybe the foreigner is the mirror. I'm going to take a chance and say something about that now. Because the foreigners are actually showing us in this country what we've become. They are showing us I want to just find a very clear way of expressing it, expressing this. They're showing us that we have become the very thing that we fought against. And if we don't see that now, then we've learned nothing. Political parties must be seen for who and what they are. The EFF, the DA, the ANC, March and March, the MK Party, blah, 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 all these guys. They are not enemies, actually. They are all wings of the same bird. They need each other. They keep us divided. They keep us distracted. And while we fight with each other, the bird flies exactly to where it wants to go. Not just here, people, everywhere. We cannot build or rebuild South Africa on the bones of the foreigner. We can't create a new nation by tearing down the people that came here for refuge. In my opinion, that's certainly not a solution, but it's more like a suicide pact, actually. What are we willing to do about it? So, now I guess we come to make the choice. We choose now, right? Not the government's choice, not the ANC's choice, not the DA's choice, your choice, our choice, our choice. South Africa is very richly mineraled. We have infrastructure. We have a legal system. We have a constitution that is the envy of the world, actually, when you look at our constitution on paper. We have the capacity for amazing greatness. But right now we choose to tear it all down and tear it apart. We are choosing to become the monster we fought. And that might be, on some level, a good thing, because we need to go through that healing as well, right? You know, we're choosing to treat the foreigners or the neighbors as our enemy, while the real enemy, the corrupt ones, the thieves, the parasites at the top, cupcake and friends, as I love to call, well, not just me, but a lot of people. I mean, they're laughing all the way to the bank. It makes me sick. I get so cross. I can just feel them sitting there laughing at us when this trauma goes down. But I guess it's not so much of what should the government do, or what must the government, how must they fix it? We know they're not going to fix anything. I mean, the question is, what are we willing to do? What are we willing to do? And are we prepared to stand up and say no and say this is wrong? Are we willing to see foreigners as human in this country again? It's weird that I sound, that even just sounds so strange rolling off my tongue, because unfortunately that's what it's become. I mean, are we willing to demand that our government stop serving its own fat parasitic agenda and actually serve the people? And if so, how are we going to do that? Are we prepared to stop participating in this perpetual machinery of hatred? Can we see that this political fight is a decoy, diversion, psyop, if you will? But the real enemy is the system. The system that absolutely 100% profits from this division, this trauma. Are we willing to actually face the fact that this country is governed by the shadow state? So many people shout about that, but yet no one seems to know what to do about it. I go on so many of these threads, and yes, these past few weeks, I've certainly been emotional about it, that's for sure. But are we prepared to see the truth? And when we do, are we prepared to then acknowledge that maybe this person or this leader that I've been following so blindly, am I prepared to understand that they're a puppet too? Am I prepared to see that they're going to use the most prettiest or handsome or most charismatic puppets to draw in the crowds? They're not going to use someone who's unlikable to draw in the crowds. They're going to use sweet faces, charming, charismatic. Look at the Hollywood, right? All these beautiful, gorgeous actors. Same thing. Different stage. They're going to use the charming ones to draw you in. And are you prepared to actually acknowledge that you've been fooled, but now you're awake and know? You know, the bottom line is, if none of us are prepared to do these things, and if we want to carry on down that same road, we have to acknowledge then that we are not just the victims of apartheid. We will inherit it. And we then become that which we once despised. Again, you know, I just I take a lot of backlash for putting out posts like this. So I'm not telling you what to believe, not shows like this, not posts, sorry. I'm not here to tell you what to believe or who to believe. I'm just telling you what I see. The people of this country fought for freedom, and now it's using that freedom to destroy itself. I mean, the ANC had held so much hope for so many people. this movement of liberation, freedom. The ANC is the biggest source of oppression that this continent, or country at least, has ever seen, in my opinion. The people who were once victims have become the perpetrators. Through this political system designed to keep us fighting and keep the apartheid narrative alive, while the elite fly the bird. And then, of course, the shadow state of billionaires holding the handle while we argue about the wings of the bird. Well, I mean, I always think about the women in this country, going back to the 80s and so forth, who absolutely lay their lives on the line to stand up for this and who fought for change in this country. We were very, very, very patriarchally dominated. So, yeah, the monsters kind of changed faces, I guess, but our choices still remain the same. We can either become the monster, or we can choose to oppose that. We can stay trapped in the two wings, or we can see the bird. And then we decide to stop. What's the word? Activating, driving those wings, right? We can continue to argue about whether there should be open or closed borders, or we can choose to see who benefits from this argument. We can keep voting for the same people, the same parties, the same system, or we can demand to see who's holding the handle, who's driving the bird. I know what I'm choosing. I'm so sick and tired of these guys. I already see. I already made my choice, that's for sure. And I hope you do too. I really, really, really do. Decode, dismantle, reorganize, choose. Thank you, everybody. As you all know, these shows are never easy for me to do. But over the past few days, I've been sitting thinking, especially with a decode, dismantle, reorganize, choose, I've been able to get it through my mind and how to process what's going on. And it makes a lot of sense to me now. And perhaps if you guys are resonating with what I'm saying here, and you're in different countries, maybe you can do the same thing with your government. What are you decoding in your government? Who are the players? Who own the mining rights in your country? Who are the mining organizations there? Right? You start decoding, and then you start dismantling, seeing that, taking it out there, observing that. Then we reorganize how we're seeing things, and then we can choose differently. And my wish is that we all choose differently. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you joining me on the show. Like, share, subscribe. I much appreciate your comments. And, as always, I invite engagement. Talk to me. Let's have discussions about these things. To me, this right now is the discussions, the topics we need to be having with each other. Because when we can start seeing how this whole system has been structured, we can start dealing with it very, very differently. We choose differently. And on that note, I say thank you so much. God bless you all. Have a beautiful day and take amazing care of yourselves. I'll see you after the weekend. If this broke something open, if you recognized yourself in the testimony, if your body responded before your mind understood, the next step isn't more information. It's pattern work. Decode what your nervous system built to survive. Dismantle the story that keeps it running. Reorganize through the body and choose, actually choose, from the person you're becoming, not from the pattern that formed when you were too small to choose. That's Solutions. Link below. The body is the record. Let's listen.